Hello, everybody. Welcome into today's broadcast. We got the PS4 League qualifiers for you here today. Aggro joined by Anatoly. And all these players are playing for the right to play in a league, which can then hopefully qualify them towards HRX. You don't have to go through all that kind of nonsense, though. You can just go to hi-rez.expo.com, buy your tickets right now. You can see your favorite console players, your favorite PC players, some of your favorite Paladins players, your favorite Anatoly. He'll be there for sure. Finch, make sure you bring your Alien Ant Farm records. If you were watching yesterday, he will definitely sign those. It's going to be a great time.
Definitely bring your otter plushies for Taco.
Yep.
Bring your English bow ties. If they win today, if they lose, make sure you don't bring anything England related.
No, we don't want to bring that up. We're positive vibes for our man Hindu Man for sure, and his England national team as they take on their opponents in the World Cup. But that's going to be later on. Right now, we're talking PS4 League qualifiers. And yesterday we showed you the schedule. We're doing NA today. But we already, these games have already been played, and they normally would have been 9 games today instead of the 6 totally, with Xbox Rejectss, 5 Deadly Sins, and Team Xist all going 2-1 today. That would have forced tiebreakers. So instead of showing just the games beforehand and then telling you the results of the tiebreakers, we decided we're going to shorten the schedule a little bit. Only 3 games today, but these are the most important games we could show you guys. These are the tiebreakers among the top 3 teams in Group A.
We saw a little bit of Europe yesterday. Charizard in my backyard doing a good job finding those 3 victories. Takedown doing a good job as well, taking out Sift as well.
Yeah, Takedown and Charizard in my backyard are your qualified teams out of Group A in Europe, and today we've got Group A in North America. So apologies for the schedule change. You might have been locked in for a longer day, but maybe now you can get a chance to watch that World Cup game between England and Croatia later on. We've got our most important games, though. We wanted to make sure we got our best ones in, and that's what you're going to get as we get ready for game number 1. Should be Xbox Rejectss versus Team Xist. Xbox Rejectss, as you can imagine by their name, a couple familiar faces. XCovi leading the way for this team.
XCovi definitely making a name for himself in the Xbox scene with that Astral Authority team, having a lot of experience with a lot of tenured players before in the past. Some old SPL players in that roster of yesteryear, and making that transition. It'll be interesting to see how he can lead this team.
Yeah, XCovi's had his hand in just about every competitive scene now. Played a lot of time during the Challenger Cup on PC, went to Xbox, found plenty of success there. The runners-up at last year's World Championships, winning every LAN besides that World Championship, and now coming over to PlayStation looking to find some more success there. So we'll see how he does, alongside a couple other former Xbox players, Joltak of noteworthy there. A couple Guardian bans by Xbox Rejectss, and that leaves open the Chang'e, and XCovi's been playing this pick for so long, it could just be going for him.
Not surprising to see that Chang'e being left open when Zhonghui and Giannis are such high priority, between just a lot of resiliency between one and just a lot of slipperiness between the other.
Yeah, Zhonghui, a god that XCovi's played a lot of. Giannis not really in his god pool, at least it used to be something that he didn't really play a lot of on Xbox. Maybe he brought it over when he's playing on the new controller. Odin and Chernobog, the 2 selections for Team Xist. Odin, the obvious choice in exchange with the Chang'e, but Chernobog left open, I think, could be a real problem for Rejectss.
Some good global pressure to have into the solo lane, potentially even, to have Chernobog farm, and then before Gold Fury can even be contested, you make that presence in the solo lane. If you're trying to shut down a Chang'e that could be in that solo lane, that's the best way to do it. You drop a Odin ring on her, make her maybe force an early level 1 Phantom, and then bring in that Chernobog.
Well, then Ra will match the sustain of that Chang'e, but won't have an Odin cage to worry about on the side of Team Xist. As they continue to ban some mages, they don't feel like that Chang'e is in the mid lane. Instead, they think it may be solo with some Cerberus support. So Agni banned away now by Xist. Kukulkan is a god that XCovi played quite a bit of during his time on Xbox. That will be left open, though, as Rygaklu is the final ban. Xist banning away 4 mages here, and with Chang'e and Ra off the board, I mean, there aren't a lot of great ones left. Discordia comes to
Zeus
mind.
potentially,
Yeah.
even Hunt Batz with a Zeus is a little scary. I like the idea of banning away the Agni. A bomb stun into Fear No Evil, followed up by Waxing Moon. That would be a great amount of control out of XR, but not going to probably see that today, depending on how their draft pans out.
Xing Chen, the selection now for Xist. Could be in the solo lane or support. I think that Odin could flex to jungle here. We'll have to wait and see, as Jing locked in by the Xbox Rejectss, waiting on their final pick, which could be mid, could be solo. Maybe this Chang'e was always meant to go in the solo lane. Indeed it was, and Zeus, you called it, a pick that xCovi has also played a lot of during his time on Xbox.
Just a good jungle pick to have in those little early corridor skirmishes around the mid Harpies. You already have 2 targets to bounce off of the chain lightning with the mid Harpies, so any sort of 2v2 skirmish should favor xCeaarr now.
Yeah, and Team Xist, on the other hand, has plenty of tankiness. Chernobog and Ra are going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the damage now that they've locked in a second warrior. Either Odin or Nike is going to be heading into the jungle. I do think that either one could go there. I mean, Nike usually thought of as the traditional solo laner, but Sam for Soccer has been messing around with Nike jungle for a little bit on stream. I've been watching him. It seems to have some merit. I mean, you've got decent ganks with it, but instead it will be DeciNerd in the jungle with the Odin.
The Ren does a lot of damage, but by having the mobile Odin cage going mid on the Zeus, going solo onto the Chang'e, it's a good idea because not everyone is going to be able to pick up the Phantom. It's only Joltak picking that up for himself. So if the Cerberus is not in the same location as Nerd is, then that's going to be trouble.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit weird to put the Phantom so far away from the pick that the Odin was really for, but xCovi could be in trouble without a Phantom on the Zeus. I mean, the Cerberus has a leap, but sometimes Jing can get stuck in there without airstrike. So I don't mind Joltak going for Phantom, but I do think that Wicked needs to be cognizant of the fact that he is still very vulnerable to that cage.
I'm also surprised that xCovi opts for the beads instead of the Aegis. He's a little bit more worried about some of the CC from potentially strategic. If he ever gets pulled by that Xing Chen ultimate, he's going to go on a wild merry ride. So he respects that over the burst damage potential of the Odin Ra combo.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that either one, you feel like you're missing out on the other relic. Without the Aegis, you really are missing that immunity on the burst damage out of Ra and out of Odin, who really don't bring any CC for themselves outside of some small slows. But strategic, if he picks you up, that's basically a guaranteed kill every time. So I think that's why xCovi elects to go for the Purification beads. Tough choice either way.
In the mid lane, xCovi trying to see if there's going to be any rotation for the left mids, but doing a good job is xCeaarr getting their own red buff, so they'll get some lane dominance while the rest of Xist going for their own red. So a little stagger in terms of the lane clear potential. The race for level 5 should favor the Order side.
Yesterday, we got our first look at these PS4 competitors, a lot of their debuts in the competitive scene, and I think that we had a lot of discussion, by we I mean F.9 on our casts, about how a lot of the time for these sorts of situations, you're really just looking not for the short term, how good are these teams going to be right away, but it's going to take time for this league to develop, for these players to develop, and you're kind of looking for those unknown stars, right? Who's going to be the guy moving forward for these teams? You know, once upon a time, Wolves, no one knew who he was, and now he's a dominant force and a household name in the console scene. And I think that's what these qualifiers are really about, is identifying not just who the best teams are, but who these future stars of the PS4 League could potentially be.
Mechanical skill definitely an important factor for certain teams to get an edge over the other, but more than anything is going to be the shot calling. Which team will outweigh the other with any sort of open windows, because every single game, no matter how far behind you are, there's always those windows of opportunity to capitalize on certain objectives, whether it be towers, Golfier, Pyromancer, whatever the case is. So that's the question that these teams need to answer during their games to identify those windows and collapse.
Oh, major stacks in some major trouble, but xCovi can't finish off that kill. DeciNerd coming in and throws the slow chain lightning off the mark, and that means xCovi is dead to rights. First blood goes to Team Xist, and xCovi was trying to make the play, but just didn't have the cooldowns necessarily to bring down stacks.
He only had about 2 passive stacks on him before the detonate, if I saw that correctly. He missed the third one, and that third basic attack would have amplified the damage. The more stacks you have, the harder the Zeus basic attack hits, and on top of that, just doing amplified damage on the third stack. So very unfortunate for xCovi. Didn't respect the Odin rotation, and good presence of mind more for major stacks to come back into the action, recognizing that Odin was going to be there. Odin himself wouldn't have enough lethal damage, so they needed the additional boost from the Ra.
And that's good communication, as you were just mentioning. That's what you're kind of looking for from a lot of these teams in their debuts of the competitive scene. I was also talking about this with F. yesterday. Sometimes it isn't just mechanics, it's decision-making on an individual basis outside of what the entire team is doing. But for me, you can almost tell, it's a little bit easier when you're playing against them and not in this top-down, but even in the top-down view, sometimes by the way a player moves, you can tell how good they are. You know, when you're going up against someone that in ranked or whatever, and you never seen their name before, you can basically tell in the first wave or two how good they really are and how they move their character around. And we saw a little bit of that. I was impressed by Eddie's play yesterday, one of the ADCs in Europe. Those sorts of names are what I'm kind of looking for as we watch these qualifiers to see how good these players can really become.
Yeah, I remember Eddie98 playing a lot of late game Artemis yesterday, doing a good job there. And like you mentioned, the first lane or two, it's all about how you position. And thus far, Wicked is getting the minion aggro by dropping his heal on the whole wave and hitting Nike at the same time to pull the melee minions closer to the archers, giving the Chang'e the lane advantage she needs to separate her own wave, making it harder for the Nike to get the full Arend off cleanly.
And I like the build that Wicked's going for here as well, going to that Breastplate of Valor very early on, giving himself some much-needed physical protection while also being able to get some CDR sooner rather than later. And he'll take advantage of that right away as soon as he gets it by firing off a Waxing Moon. Just to make sure he gets lane pressure here. No continued chase because Odin is in range. Good choice there from Wicked to play it a little bit slower.
Oh, but going for the invade. Definitely heard the jump from that distance, but without your other jungler, as the Batz is on the left side setting up a gank potentially, you got to concede the blue buff. But honestly, once Breastplate of Valor is completed, you got enough base mana and MP5 that losing that blue, not the end of the world. But Wicked doesn't want to back quite yet, knowing that he doesn't have teleport, so he can't afford to lose any of that valuable experience.
Yeah, no teleport, no boots either means that it would be a long walk back to base. So he is so low on mana that I don't think he really has a choice. This is where that Chang'e passive of not just the bunny, but the increased movement speed while using an ability will come into play. Joltak positions aggressively on this left-hand side, looking for a little bit of pressure onto the enemy purple buff as Outbound. We'll just focus on clearing the way.
Just a 2-on-2 casually on the left side, while Chernobog still can easily rotate with that global ultimate whenever he wants. Xcovi gonna juke out the Searing Pain. Fear No Evil coming through. Zeus ultimate on top, but not enough stacks to really get lethal.
Very close. DeciNerd, very good patience, not even use the purification beads there. A little bit scary to eat that full Fear No Evil. So we got a quick pause coming out from Team Xist. That is that's a good turnaround potential there for Xbox Rejectss. xCovi able to just sneak out of the way of that snipe from Major Stacks.
Both of them living is great at the end of the day. Raw with the first blood as we approach the 6.5 minute mark. A slight lead over xCovi thus far, but the game is anywhere close to being decided. There's still a lot of plays to be had between these junglers. The Odin still trying to make a presence here. Needs to look for those ganks away from the Cerberus. That's his only counter with the Phantom being on him.
Yeah, don't think he dropped the cage there in mid. It ended up, or if he did, didn't really end up mattering to xCovi in that spot. And there's not a lot of guaranteed follow-up off that Odin cage. That's the thing that I'm noticing about this composition from Team Xist is they've got plenty of tankiness, plenty of initiation, but the damage seems to be a little bit lacking. Do they need to get off to a good start in order to utilize just that warrior base damage?
I don't think they have to get off to a great start. They just need to make sure they get the vision control that they need once their teams do start to group up around some of these key important objectives.
Gold Furies and things of that nature. Very good to have your cage up in those instances. No Odin cage was used in the mid lane as we get back in the game very quickly. xCovi rushing the Gem of Isolation. I thought for sure this was going to be a Warlock staff with the Fortified Scepter. I'm kind of at a loss, Tola. You got anything on this one?
I mean, as long as there's no sprints, you're in a good spot. Like the thing is, you want to amplify your damage of your basic attacks. I think really min-maxing that basic attack once you already have 3 stacks is probably a good DPS race, but if there's any sort of slow immunity, if you just outrange some of those basic attacks, there's so many better power spikes than this. Like, so many mages have been rushing Chronos Pendant just to get off more detonates, more chain lightnings, being able to rush the Soul Reaver if you're really looking for that big pop.
Right.
There's just even the Boots Rush, like anything, I think.
Right.
I like the Gem of Isolation, don't get me wrong, but not at this point in the game. It's a little too early for my liking.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think the Gem of Isolation is a bad item on Zeus. It's not my favorite, but it makes sense to me. But first item, I mean, you can go Boots first and then pick up the Gem. especially against a Raw, it's going to be hard to match those rotations as Joltak finds a beautiful Stygian Torment, and Outbound and Xcovi will claim one apiece off the back of that initiation from Joltak. Both Major Stacks and Strategic fall very quick.
And that play brought to you by Joltak's ultimate, not from the slow out of the Gem of Isolation. Any
Right.
sort of burst damage would be more significant as the game progresses, as some of these players get more defensive items and just base health according to their level.
And Rygaklu's ultimate earlier on was a big factor as well. That forced out the beads from Major Stacks. I mentioned that DeciNerd did not use his. Major Stacks had, and Joltak makes him pay very, very quickly. Strategic also not tanky at all at this point in the game. He's gone for the Shoes of Focus, kind of to be expected right now from Guardians, but when you go for that Gauntlet of Thebes rush, means that your early game means you're pretty vulnerable as Major Stack gets crit right away by Hun. Batz jumps forward, can't quite find that follow-up auto attack.
Oh.
Snipe is perfect from Major Stacks, a great shot, and they turn it around onto Xbox Rejectss jungle.
Oh, but the minions right next to xCovi, getting the stacks onto DeciNerd, trying to chase him down is going to be Joltak. Paralyzing Spit does connect, but xCovi a little bit too far away, only sitting on boots too.
Yep.
Can't have the follow-up.
Yeah, there's not enough damage right there. Also, the base protections from Warriors is noticeable in the early game, and by not buying pen boots early, could end up hurting xCovi. xCovi trying to juke out up against Beaudilla, but will not be able to do so. Cosmo is ultimate, but still a worthwhile trade. Good rotation in from the solo lane, and that's what you do against a Chang'e, right? You're not always going to be able to win the laning phase against her. You're not going to always be able to kill her in lane because she can be so safe, but you can out-clear most of the time and then use your rotations effectively to impact the map elsewhere.
And with the double sentry vision control out of Team Xist, controlling the right side of the map means that there's no wards that Rejectss can really identify the pathing out of this Nike. Wicked probably did make that call, but honestly, sometimes in the mid lane, you don't necessarily always respect the MIA call, and Nike really punishing the Zeus before the boots was completed. Just now finishing it off is xCovi.
Well timed from Bo, for sure, but now it's just about even. Not going for an early Pestilence, which is almost core, I feel like, against Chang'e. It gives you the magical protection, health, and shuts down some of her healing. But instead, likely to be a Genji's guard, could also be an Oni Hunter's guard if he really wants to. But either of those options, a little bit cheaper, kind of more focused on his own play rather than shutting down what Wicked wants
He's
to do.
probably thinking about forcing team fights now where the healing out of Chang'e is not at its most impactful point of the game. Good little double dash out of Cbeaarr, avoiding any damage from Outbound. But going back to the discussion of Genji's versus the Pestilence, Chang'e's heal, not that important at this point in the game. You'd much rather get it later in the stages, and by going Genji's guard, it's a lot cheaper also than the Pestilence. You're not getting as much health necessarily, but more than anything is the cooldowns of you being able to just dive that back line.
Yeah, exactly. Plenty of MP5 as well. Make sure you never run out of mana on Nike, who isn't a particularly mana-hungry character, but can fall into mana issues eventually, as a lot of solo laners can. Major Stacks used a snipe on the Oracles a little bit ago to make sure that Vision did not go Xbox Rejectss' way. I've liked Major Stacks' liberal use of the ultimate. Hasn't always found a home, but Ra is one of those characters that you should be trying to ult just about every time you have it up.
Especially when you're going for the Evolved Mage's Blessing, Chronos Pendant. Even with some of the nerfs to the Searing Pain ultimate, it's still significantly faster than most ultimates in the game.
Bo, successful in his blue buff steal, but as you mentioned, Wicked at this point has enough MP5 that it won't hurt him that much, though. Again, his mana pool is really low. He's using a lot of mana every wave.
He used the Waxing Moon trying to confirm it, couldn't find it just in the nick of time. Needed to get out of range of the Nike jump to prevent the knockup, and then accordingly use some of those abilities. If Wicked is that desperate to get his own blue buff, he needs to start calling for some rotations out of the Hun Bats to be able to confirm it.
Yeah, Rygaklu has not been over to that solo lane quite yet at all this game. Strategic, instead of going for Gauntlet of Thebes, as I thought he was going for, has elected for a Stone of Binding, and this is an aggressive item that does lend itself to fighting early if that's what Team Xist wants to do. They just haven't shown a lot of willingness to do that quite yet.
They're making some rotations onto the mid lane. xCovi hasn't had that much opportunity to breathe, sitting with 2 deaths. has finished off his boots, so he's going to be a little bit more slippery to get away from some of the action, and he could back to base for that second relic to avoid a lot of this burst damage. The topic of discussion between Beads and Xist is an important one at level 1, but once you hit level 12, you get the best of both worlds.
Has both available to him, though he won't back quite yet. Wicked going pretty far forward into the enemy side of the jungle, right about the midway point, but with DeciNerd being on his side of the jungle, knew he was going to get a rotation. No punish for it. Surprised that no Odin cage in that spot, knowing that Wicked didn't have a Phantom?
I think Major Stacks was not in position to really follow up. Between a Nike and an Odin, it's not the most damaging to gods in the game, at least at this point. Trying to look at their items. Odin's Wrath, maybe it would have been a kill if they committed to it, or at least get him low enough to force a back out of Wicked, force a defensive Wax and Moon, and then take that little bit of a window into the Gold Fury side.
xCovi pushing up in the mid lane without knowledge that Bo is behind him. Knock up, not there. Slow is. Kovi's going to use the beads to prevent it, and xCovi trying to play a little bit more aggressive because this is what Zeus does, and he's still alive, juking around as long as he can. DeciNerd tries to get out of there, and he will do so. xCovi does eventually fall to that Stygian Torment from Strategic, but Joltak has a support ultimate of his own. Beaudilla through the wall with the Waxing Moon from Wicked will make it a 1-for-1.
Trading solo for mid. Can't really decide which one that's going to be better for, depending on what objective is next. With a sustain from Chang'e, though, this could be an objective. However, Rygaklu has to back, not going to be looking for any objectives quite yet as the red buff gets stripped away, hurting Major Stacks in the process.
Yeah, I think that ends up favoring Xbox Rejectss just because of that red buff invade. And xCovi does a great job of staying alive way longer than he really had business staying alive, and maybe that's where the Gem of Isolation plays in, right? Slows everyone down with that Lightning Storm and gives himself some extra HP with the item itself. Ends up working out for him.
Also surviving long enough without use of the Aegis. He didn't have time to back once he hit level 12 to pick that up, and I think a key moment in that team fight was when the Nike actually missed that jump from behind. If you knock up the Zeus there, that's going to be important. Also, a great defensive ultimate from Rygaklu that disrupted the engagement out of DeciNerd that wanted to find the perfect Odin cage, but because he was disrupted the first time, he was forced to use the beads, and at that point, he did a frustration ultimate where he didn't even catch xCovi inside the cage.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly what Nerd was looking for in that spot. Though ends up working out eventually, as xCovi does eventually fall. But even still, with this aggressive early game composition that Xist could have, should they so choose, don't need to win the early game, as you mentioned earlier, but have the tools to do so if that was their plan. They haven't been the aggressors all that often. It's kind of been surrounded around Beaudilla, and his rotations into the mid lane is the only time Xist has really looked to play aggressive.
Which is a good timing, considering that the Chang'e is not at her most primal form of combat, considering that Joltak is still working on some of the stacks from Gauntlet of Thebes. Xist is timing these engagements pretty well, I'd say. It's just that the lack of execution to really get that under their belt.
Joltak, isolated, does have his Phantom available, but his jump is down. DeciNerd could look for a cage in this spot. Snipe is good for Major Stacks, and that bird bomb damage was serious from the Odin jungle. You don't see it that often, the double mace from Odin, but when it happens, man, that damage, you got to respect it. An easy pick on a Joltak, and now Xist heading for gold.
That's a good opportunity to take care of Joltak while he still needs 10 more stacks to finish that up. Gold Fury being reset, blinking in the back line. Rygaklu forcing out Major Stacks, but in the other side, the Odin cage comes through.
Oh, but DeciNerd's getting shredded. xCovi still alive in that Odin cage as Cbeaarr forces back. Outbound Rygaklu doing what he can, but Major Stacks turns it around nicely. xCovi will find one, but Beaudilla eventually knocks him down, as now it's only Wicked left on this side of the map for Xbox Rejectss. Nice knock up from Bo, and a double kill for the Nike solo laner. Team Xist now up 8-4, and they're heading right back for the objective.
After the revive out of Joltak, that was technically a 4-for-1, only giving up the Odin. Back to the Gold Fury. Xist goes, trying to find the steal. Xist confirms it.
Nice snipe from Major Stacks. Was a little bit late, but the one did the job to confirm anyways. Xist looking really good here, Tolly, and I think that, you know, in my mind, I was looking at Xbox Rejectss as the favorite coming into this one, just knowing xCovi's competitive experience, knowing the competitive experience from Joltak is there as well. It just hasn't really paid off quite yet for the Xbox Rejectss. Instead, it's Team Xist who's in the lead.
It's a little bit of the builds, honestly. I'm not a fan of the Gem of Isolation and the fact that Joltak has been forced to go into a team fight scenario before Gauntlet of Thebes. He got taken advantage of with that Odin Bird Bomb, going for now a Pestilence to try to deal with some of the damage out of the Ra. The Xing Chen makes him squishier for this double mace build out of DeciNerd.
Yeah, it certainly has worked out for DeciNerd so far, but Xbox Rejectss still not out of it by any means, down about 3,000 gold at this point. Experience also about that same mark. And so far, I mean, we talked at length early on about this is a lot about not just finding the best teams for the PlayStation 4 League, but also finding the rising stars of this league. Beaudilla has impressed. I mean, he has been a huge factor in everything that Xist has done.
And this is why they want to fight, considering that the Nike Halos need to get completed sooner rather than later. 2 more kills for Xist, and they get their second Halo to get more mobility throughout the map, which is, you know, bigger than the previous Season 4. And more damage on top of that aura, and you're getting more damage onto a late game Ra, late game Chernobog. I think Xist is going to be sitting pretty.
Should be in a good spot after that, especially with Beaudilla's mystical mail. I mean, he really took advantage of the slower laning phase that Chang'e can provide. Now as a Hide of the Urchin, right before a big team fight part of the game could break out. If Xist start to win team fights over and over again now, it'll be hard for Rejectss to come back.
Once I saw the Tier 1 version of the Steel Mail, I thought for sure it was going to be Merguardian.
Yeah.
Considering that you're dealing with a Jing, it also hurts xCovi's DPS output with some of his basic attacks, but no, going the distance, Beaudilla wants to get that damage over time. If he goes into the backline and disrupts Rygaklu, there's going to be no blink engagements out of the Hun Batz, maximizing the DPS, and knowing Xist wants to fight anyway. If you're trying to build stacks in terms of the Nike passive, well, why not throw a Hide of the Urchin right on top of it?
Makes a lot of sense. And the Thorns, I think, is great in this spot. It's good against Jing, who will sometimes crit you even if she doesn't want to with explosive bolts, but Zeus is, when he drops Lightning Storm, it's not coming back. You know, he's putting out that damage, and Bo could potentially just sit in it, pop Thorns, and deliver xCovi some pain.
I'll never forget the video that Aurora made, his highlight clip
with Kuzenbo.
Playing the Kuzenbo. He just drops the shells, drops the thorns. He removes his hands from his keyboard and his mouse and starts dancing, and then the Zeus just eliminates himself.
That's a feels bad, man. But, well, not for Aurora, or in this case, Beaudilla, just for the Zeus player. But that's always who I'm going to identify with, of course. xCovi now has both his relics up, so has some safety around this mid lane, even with DeciNerd there and hovering. Looks like xCovi's going for an E-Staff. It's the only option that I could see coming from this option now with the Fortified Scepter. Really going for some extra tankiness in this build. He should have plenty of HP once that's finished.
An extra health is never a bad thing, but on top of the health, other defensive features is the crowd control reduction. You're getting 10% from Gem of Isolation, 20% from the Ethereal Staff, and if you don't have the Purification Beads, well, any sort of slows, you want to get rid of that as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the root on the second part of the hook slam from Xing Chen, you're already getting DR'd by the knockup portion of that ability.
True.
So you can put yourself in a better spot potentially. Snipe gonna land right onto xCovi. Beads gets him out of that whirlwind, and xCovi's gonna try and turn and burn as he has all game long, but Beaudilla's right there. He's taking no damage at all in the middle of that lightning storm. Xbox Rejectss blow a lot just to make sure that their mid laner stays alive, but Xist barely really use anything to keep themselves alive. Everything was aggressive, and they still managed to get that Tier 1 tower.
They really want those kills for those stacks of Nike and the Hide of Urchin, but on top of that, forcing out xCovi away defensively is the key strategy from Xist. They dump a lot of abilities onto the mid-mage. Joltak being at the right place at the right time, gets the Phantom off just in the nick of time, buying xCovi a secondary life. But Xist got what they came for, honestly. They got the Tier 1 tower, 500 gold, but better than that is even just the mid-positioning, being able to control some of this aggressive past the imaginary midway point of the line allows you to ward deeper into the enemy jungle. And if you identify where the enemy is coming from, then you can adapt accordingly to look for anything on the left or the right side of the map.
Very controlled from Team Xist, and that's impressed me so far. A lot of teams in that spot, you know, oh, we're team fighting, we've got to get kills. No, Xist, very objective oriented, and that's the sign of a good team. Excited to see that already in these PS4 just league qualifiers. As Gold Fury down below half HP, Major Stacks will step up as Joltak gonna jump in, realize his mistake, and immediately try and back up. DeciNerd a little bit off the mark with that bird bomb, but Strategic will throw Joltak back. Problem is, Rygaklu went to the backside and immediately deleted Major Stacks. Joltak will eventually fall, as now Kobe's got to deal with a couple warriors, but Wicked and the rest of the Xbox Rejectss have just pushed forward and have decimated the damage dealers from Team Xist.
It took too long to take out Joltak, and the rest of the backline from Xist was exposed. Outbound making a great offensive airstrike, going past Beaudilla, going past DeciNerd, being able to really penetrate that backline defenses. Gets a tier 1 tower for themselves in the mid lane, and Rejectss now transition for their first Gold Fury of the game.
Should be a pretty good one, though. Beaudilla, DeciNerd, and Strategic are here, and even though they don't bring a lot of damage, plenty of disruption, but I don't think they'll get there in time. They will not. Xbox Rejectss do get their first Gold Fury, and now they begin the chase on a Strategic. Realize that's a bad call with how healthy that level 16 Xing is at this point in the game, and give up that chase. Strategic has looked very good so far, though. I mean, the farm level that he has is pretty insane. He's up 2 levels over Joltak right now, and is just way, way tankier than the Cerberus.
It definitely feels that way, and a lot of his build is the result of wanting to be this early to mid-game Guardian presence, and it's going to start to hurt Xist as the game moves forward. Wicked trying to look for that perfect waxing moon. The Mystical Mail actually procs the Fire Giant. Good knockup onto DeciNerd, going to eliminate some of his Odin shield, sitting at about 80% health. Could allow Reject to really start grouping up, and if Major Stacks drops his heal on top of DeciNerd, well, that's a prime real estate target for the Fear No Evil, for the Waxing Moon even.
No Ethereal Staff done yet for Xcovi, as Pyromancer getting low, secured by the Detonator. Strategic only picks up Joltak, and that's fine by him, but Outbound is in some trouble. Is going to need the airstrike away, and he'll do just that, but here comes DeciNerd on the backside, uses that cage. Good Fear No Evil, though, disrupts this team fight beautifully. Lightning Storm doesn't do a whole lot out of Xcovi as Major Stacks continues to push forward with a nice Celestial Beam. Not enough to bring anybody down, but Xist can use this sustain, and they're going to go straight for the Fire Giant. Only a couple members healthy enough to try and contest, but Xbox Rejectss not letting that stop them. They're going straight in for that objective. Rygaklu going to blink in on the backside, but big knock up there. Major Stacks finds a kill, and Xist able to secure the Fire Giant, but they may lose their Odin.
DeciNerd buys enough time to look for some more follow-up. Xcovi outweighs the Aegis just in time. Only 2 make that one. Beaudilla now in a 1v2, and he stands the lonely Xist member with the Fire Giant.
Man, that crit from Rygaklu was huge there to bring down Cbeaarr, who had relics up, totally just wasn't ready for that burst damage coming out of this Hun Batz. A great chain lightning there from Xcovi. Rygaklu tried to actually get behind everybody and steal away Fire Giant, but it doesn't end up working out. Instead, it still goes the way of Team Xist, but the team fight goes the way of Xbox Rejectss.
I agree, but I think that Xist had bigger picture in mind. It was still the stacking department. Xist now crosses that 10-kill threshold, finding the kills onto Xcovi, Outbound, and Joltak. They only had 9 kills before that team fight, and now getting some more stacks onto Beaudilla, sitting with 4 Urchin stacks. Only needs 7 to get completed now with the recent changes to the item, going from 10 stacks down to 7, but also increasing the protections from 2 protections per stack to up to 3. So you're actually gaining a 1 protection advantage since the patch change.
Yeah, and getting closer as it is. Then already getting close to that third part of the Nike passive. Only need to get 1 more member up to level 20, and as I mentioned it happens. Cbeaarr the second to hit that max level mark in this game, and as a result, Nike passive has now been completed. So getting extra damage and extra movement speed to your entire team is pretty good.
Winged Blade for Strategic, trying to get there even faster, adding a Nike passive on top of it. It's going to put him in a great position. Xcovi doesn't have much room to breathe, and his health is just consistently getting higher now with this build. After the E-Staff, working on the Steel Mail, probably going to be...
Could be a Midgardian for
Yeah,
him.
that's what I was thinking, trying to limit some of the attacks out of Beaudilla and Deki.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kovi's top damage right now, even with this super tanky build that he's gone for. But I don't know. I think that at some point it becomes a little bit too much in my mind. I don't know that he really needs a Midgardian Mail or whatever he's building into in this spot. He's already got plenty of health between the Ethereal and the Gem of Isolation. And there could become a time where Beaudilla becomes so tanky that it's hard to bring him down without that, you know, Soul Reaver or Rod of Tahuti damage that you're used to.
Even with Spear of the Magas, is that really going to be enough penetration against
where's
the
the
late
Obsidian
game?
Shard?
Between the 3 important items that I'm thinking of late game was those 2 that you mentioned, plus the Obsidian Shard. So Midgardian Mail has been completed, and this is kind of like your mid-game build out of Xcovi, where if Xbox Rejectss don't really start grouping up now, I think that late game, they're going to start to falter a little bit. I think that the positioning and mobility, rather, of Xist between the Nike passive is going to be enough to really just start forcing some of these engagements.
Well, keep in mind, he does still have 1 slot remaining. He can sell that Mage's Blessing for an Obsidian Shard if he so chooses. We'll have to wait and see if that's what he decides. Is Major Stacks, on the other hand, going for a very traditional Rob build. Soul Reaver will be his next item. If it's anything else, I'd be shocked. He's really relying on that long-range burst damage, and he's done a pretty good job of it. 3rd overall on the player damage, right behind Beaudilla on this mystical male Nike is Xist. Looking for the Gold Fury yet again. Rygaklu kept busy by DeciNerd, and he's going to jump right into it. Snipe not quite there, though, and Fear No Evil is very disruptive. JoltakFromXbox Phantom gets him out of the Odin cage as Xist and Xbox Rejectss all pretty low. They both have sustain, though.
It's a race to see who will top off the other better, needing to group up a little bit too much. A triple knock-up!
And then the Bird Bomb as well, but DeciNerd gets decimated. The Wicked, it will get that kill. Joltak fell as well. Cbeaarr will eventually bring down one and the other. Cbeaarr will fall to this detonate from Xcovi. Good chain lightning and patience, but now it's only Xcovi and Outbound, and pushing forward here into Beaudilla is not going to be particularly easy. Strategic gets low from the combo from Xcovi. Major Stack still healthy, has a snipe.
His ulti is available. He just needs the vision for it. He's lining it up through the wall, and he gets Outbound.
Beautiful from Major Stacks. Outbound had the Aegis, but may not have heard it from that distance. Xist get 4 members, only Xcovi left standing, and it looks like they're going straight for Fire Giant here, Toli. This feels a little bit risky. They don't have a lot of DPS. Will they be able to burn this before Xcovi gets there?
This is super risky. Maybe they just go for Pyromancer, but no, ignoring that completely, trying to position themselves as it's respawning. Xcovi can easily disrupt this by his lonesome. I don't think the DPS is that high, and now Major Stacks is losing some DPS by getting knocked up. This could collapse on its head.
Yeah, I think that just going for gold in that spot is such a safer call from Team Xist, and they've been really safe in their shot calls thus far, and that's why this call kind of surprises me for them to go for the riskier option. Knowing that Xcovi is up, he has his ultimate available, and immediately Xist will drop it once he and Joltak show up.
Now, if it was a baiting opportunity to allow Cbeaarr to get into a team fight with his ultimate, that would have been fine and dandy, but without the ultimate up, Living Nightmare still needs, just now coming off cooldown, gonna have to drop that Fire Giant objective. Without your Hunter, it's unrealistic almost to even go for a Fire Giant when there's 1, let alone 2 opposing members contesting it.
Gold Fury not as valuable as it once was now that we reached the 31-minute mark, but there are major items that still need to be completed by Team Xist. I mean, a Wind Demon is almost done for Cbeaarr. Magi's Cloak nearly done for DeciNerd, and you wonder if that Gold Fury goes down, maybe they can finish those.
Major Stack still only sitting with the Mage's Blessing on that first item pickup.
Yep.
That would have been important to complete it. On the other side, though, Xcovi's still working on that penetration. Will go for the Obsidian Shard, so Xist could easily try to collapse, though, with the left side presence. Cbeaarr split pushing the tier 2 tower.
I don't have a problem with this. I think that giving up Pyromancer for a tier 2 is still worth it for Team Xist, but now Cbeaarr is going to have to make a choice as Xbox Rejectss begins to pull the Fire Giant, but immediately they'll back it up. Send Rygaklu back. That is one character who can
see it, though, is the question.
Yeah, I don't know. Xist seem to have known because they're trying to put pressure onto Xbox Rejectss, and here comes the ultimate from Cbeaarr. He doesn't have a great landing spot. He's going to go in, has to dash away. Joltak on the way behind him. Cbeaarr gets stunned out. Snipe is pretty solid, but Joltak doesn't even get to pull anybody in. Stygian Torment never got to fully complete as the damage from Xist was good enough. xCovi does bring down Cbeaarr, who didn't have his relics up, and Wicked still dancing through the opposition.
Bird Bomb in the back line. Majorstacks uses his Aegis, but it's just not enough. Double kill for Outbound with the airstrike. Now in a 3-on-1 is Beaudilla. Make that a 4-on-1 as he tries to retreat left side while Strategic on the right.
Man, what happened there for Xist? That was such a good team fight.
It had to have been a great one because they drop Joltak so quickly in that engagement, but it took too long to burn Wicked during the Odin cage. Without the Phantom from Joltak, that should have been a free follow-up kill.
Yeah, it's surprising. Beaudilla still here and still putting pressure on the opposition. It's him against the world right now, and the world will win. Xbox Rejectss get the Fire Giant. They get the near deicide. 4 members of Xist on the respawn timer. And now Xbox Rejectss get their opportunity to strip some gold away from the map because 3 tier 2 towers still standing means that's 4,500 gold just waiting to go into the Rejectss pockets.
There was a lot of AoE damage from xCR in that engagement. Yes, they did kill Joltak, but by doing so, they all had to group up. The Fear No Evil, the Lightning Storm, even that overhand smash did too much damage. Majorstacks got the hit onto Joltak with a Searing Pain, but his positioning after the fact was not ideal for a mid-mage. He was a little too far forward. Being in position for the Chain Lightning bounce is never a world that Ra wants to be in.
No, and xCovi has just done so much damage this game. 33,000. No one else near 20K so far. And he's just finished off that Obsidian Shard, so it's going to get even better for him against these tanks. But Majorstacks fell very quickly. And Xbox Rejectss have been consistently fighting in the jungle, which is where their team composition can really shine. It allows Wicked to get in and around corners, keep him pretty safe. xCovi is going to do his most damage in the jungle. Rygaklu can separate the team fight very easily in the jungle. And Xbox Rejectss has certainly taken advantage of that up until this point as we're 34 minutes in. The Rejectss now taking a lead for the first time in a while. Still down in kills, but they're the ones with all the momentum.
And I think also Xist could have played it a little bit more patiently. Cbeaarr used his ultimate too early.
Yeah, way too early.
I think that there was a disconnect between him and the rest of his team wanting to go for Fire Giant. Batz was clearly going to be on the defensive on left from our eyes, but not necessarily from Xist size. If you bait that out a little bit longer, get xCR a little closer to the pit, that's when Cbeaarr could have used the ultimate from the backhand side, maybe isolate a particular member.
Also, Cbeaarr didn't have any of his relics available whenever he went in, so the CC chain from the Waxing Moon was really difficult for him to deal with. He got tossed in a bad spot by Joltak's ultimate, even though it didn't really fully complete. It still knocked up Cbeaarr, I believe, and that led to an easy kill, so it ended up being a 4-on-4 much more quickly than Xist would have liked, as Xbox Rejectss just taking their time, going from one tower to the next. They'll get all 3 of the tier 2s, as I mentioned. That's 4,500 gold spread across the team. They'll be able to back and buy if they so choose, but everyone is full build.
They got their grocery list, and they're going down each individual item to cross it off of their list. I like this idea, not overextending a little bit too much for these late game objectives, and this Chang'e sustain has just been outweighing a little bit of the Ra sustain because of how mobile the Chang'e can be, just get in and out of the action. The Ra sustain a little bit stronger in the impact, but that's mostly out of combat. In combat, I think Wicked has been doing a better job by nature of being Chang'e.
Ooh, DeciNerd has to use the Odin cage defensively. It's Outbound really put the hurting on him very, very quickly. Not a lot of anti-heal on the other side. I mean, the Brawler's beat stick just now, Divine Ruin coming from Majorstacks. Blink in from Strategic. He'll pick up Outbound, but agility is good to get him out of danger. Majorstacks' ultimate only hits onto Joltak as he's forced back very quickly. Rygaklu, though, in a ton of trouble. He's very low, and Outbound's going to airstrike away.
Forcing the airstrike is a good opportunity for Living Nightmare, trying to catch the Batz instead of the Xing. A little surprised about that one. With Living Nightmare upon landing, you're receiving some damage mitigation. That could have been a good opportunity to go onto Outbound with the rest of his teammates right beside him and hide inside the wall if there's just too much pressure. Great use of the Batz ultimate originally, trying to zone 3 members away, but it still wasn't enough for xCR to find the right side Phoenix.
And that kind of comes back, doesn't it, to that idea that the Xbox Rejectss is just so much better in the jungle with this team fight. I mean, that is the first lane fight we've had in quite some time. The other one I can think of was under the tier 1 mid tower of the Order side, and Team Xist won that team fight pretty easily. This is the first time we've seen a lane fight since then, and Xist defends successfully.
Trying to make a little bit of poke damage onto Strategic, getting about 20 to 30% of Strategic's health, but with the raw sustain, will top himself off quite nicely. And you're right, with 33 kills in about 37 minutes, there hasn't been that much lane fighting. A lot of the action has been in the jungle, which does favor the Zeus on Xcovi.
Malice the pick for Rygaklu. Interesting sort of selection. Doesn't have a Deathbringer quite yet, as we might not get a chance to touch on that because Wicked is already in a ton of trouble, but that Mantle of Discord gets him out of that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel from Strategic. DeciNerd in the front line trying to do what he can. Xcovi somehow detonates from the way downtown. Chain Lightning getting them plenty of distance is now a 2-man pickup from Joltak. Double Waxing Moon, and that might just do it here. Team Xist just getting crushed down again in the jungle.
Doing a good job penetrating the backline, but no one could follow up onto Wicked because they're all getting zoned away by Rygaklu in the backline. Such an annoying Batz to deal with the Malice that you touched upon, doing so much extra damage. Being a sitting duck during the raw heal is never what you want to do with all these AoE abilities.
Right side Phoenix, the Siege. Beaudilla jumps away and has to use the sprint off the slow from Xcovi. 30 seconds still on major stacks, but Xbox Rejectss don't have any waves totally. There's none coming. Maybe this won't be game. No, instead, they'll back it up. No ultimate from Xcovi, but there is a Fear No Evil from Rygaklu. I don't know. It's a close call in that spot. Don't think I can fault Xbox Rejectss for not going for the end. That doesn't mean they couldn't have gotten it.
Without Fire Giant, it's better safe than sorry. At least they get the right side Phoenix before the Fire Giant, even making more use of this buff that's due to come. It will be the enhanced Fire Giant. Beaudilla looking for the steal, but a good Fear No Evil will secure it.
Oh, Cbeaarr going to join the fray with that Living Nightmare, but he doesn't have a lot of help. It's just him and Beaudilla together. They will back up together as now the Rejectss with their second Fire Giant of the game. This one, certainly the enhanced version.
The 30% extra structure damage could help be that additional tipping point to get the middle and the left side Phoenix to cleanly look for the end, as Xist needs to play defense now, and easier said than done. And look at all those 3K potions. One consumed by Outbowned, and then 2 more from Rygaklu and Xcovi.
12,000 gold worth of 3K potions between 4 members of the Xbox Rejectss. That is a ton of extra damage or survivability. I love that Wicked decides to go for the Elixir of Defense in this spot. Doesn't really need to be doing a whole lot of damage. He's just there to be this annoyance and a heal factor, and just staying alive is more important than the numbers that he's putting out. He'll be blinked upon by the DeciNerd. Blink forward, but from Strategic as well. Snipe is good from major stacks. Fear No Evil not enough from Rygaklu, and that's a big pick.
Definitely. It could have been a little earlier, was the defensive Fear No Evil. And without Joltak there for the Phantom, that was a clean pick. A whole minute now without Wicked gives Xist a 5-on-4 advantage, but I don't think they can do anything with it here, aggro. Right side, Phoenix did go down, means that fire minions are going to trickle down that lane if left unattended.
Yeah, I don't mind the idea to go for a tier 2 here if your team exists. I mean, Xbox Rejectss will probably throw a half-hearted defense at you, but probably not going to try and, take the game off a tier 2. Plus, it gives you an extra win condition as team Xist, but it looks like the Rejectss are interested in defending. Tier 2's already down to about half HP. Xcovi gonna pop the 3K pot. Joltak jumps away. Beaudilla right after him, and Strategic gonna use his Whirlwind, but gets countered by Stygian Torment. Bo brought right back in. Great Sentinel of Zeus prevents the kill from going Zeus's way, and now Xcovi is the one who gets shut down. Rygaklu will answer back on a Cbeaarr as Joltak still nice and healthy pushing forward.
Good stun onto stacks. Raw sustain now coming through as Outbound comes into the thick of things. Wicked just now reviving, and Fire Giant still not up for another minute or 2 minutes and a half. Joltak leading the charge. He blinks on in. Needs to find another stun, or at least maybe a slow.
Found the stun on to major stacks as Outbound and Rygaklu on the chase. No blink for the Batz, but Joltak is continually slowing down major stacks, and he will eventually fall. Joltak really had his pick of the litter there, and I think makes the correct selection on who he wanted to go for. Brings down the enemy mid laner for over a minute.
xCovi did so much damage in that team fight. Xist going past the tier 2 tower, wanting to commit with the ultimate from Strategic. Great counter ultimate from Joltak, giving himself that CC immunity and catching a couple members. That was so important for the follow-up damage. A questionable raw sustain outside of the tier 2 tower before that engagement even popped off. You got to be scratching your head if you're on Xist side, if you got to be thinking about that raw sustain in the middle of a team fight.
Mid Phoenix very low, and it will fall. Outbound doesn't have his dash, doesn't need to use his beads because Joltak was the only one picked up by Strategic. As in goes DeciNerd. 3-man cage is good, and Phantom is down right now from Joltak, but there's just no follow-up. Cbeaarr's on the right side trying to defend that Phoenix. Now Joltak gonna pick up a couple tanks. Waxing Moon only hits one, but Outbound falls before Airstrike comes out. Wicked will bring down the Odin jungle on the other side as right side Phoenix respawn, but Rygaklu still nice and healthy. Could be enough to bring it down again.
I don't think Cbeaarr can really defend this one on his own. Major Stacks making the revive. It's a 4-on-4 now after that 1-for-1 exchange. Trading jungler or the Hunter slows down the push out of XR. No Hunter means no Phoenixes.
This is a very, very close game between the Xbox Rejectss and Team Xist. If you're just joining us, this is not the first time they've played. Actually, these two teams have played against one another. The whole group ended up in a 3-way tie here in Group A of North America. Xist, Xbox Rejectss, and the 5 Deadly Sins all ended up at 2-1. So we're playing the tiebreakers between these teams, making sure we bring you the most important games we can of these PS4 qualifiers. This is, we've definitely got at least 3 games here today, Toli, between these teams. Could be more. Could go into another set of tiebreakers if everything falls the way of these teams that are trying to make it in to the PS4 console league. We'll have to wait and see. This is just game 1 of the day, and it's been a close one. You can tell that this group is going to be tight.
That's true, and there's going to be another group to follow soon. We also have tomorrow and Friday to get through between North America and Europe. These teams coming through some open bracket qualifications to round it out in this group play, as these two teams are very close, evenly matched. They need to figure out ways to seal the deal cleanly because they see the opportunities in terms of team fights. They recognize certain relics being on cooldown, specifically of Outbound not having his Aegis during that last little skirmish, or at the tail end of it, rather, during the Odin cage. It was the Phantom from Joltak that had about a 30-second window where DeciNerd really made an impact.
In these sort of 3-way tiebreaker scenarios, the initial games are always very, very important, but really you're just looking, the wins are great, and obviously that's what you want, but really you're just looking to avoid taking 2 losses, because 2 losses immediately eliminates you. You can lose a game and still be okay as long as one team finds 2 losses. So if you could keep your record clean through the first game, that's a great start off to a 3-way tiebreaker like this.
And there's good tools for both teams to find the victories here. Xbox Rejectss looking for the left side Phoenix Siege, the last remaining one that Xist has to desperately hold onto if they want to avoid their first loss of the tiebreaker.
Both mid and right side Phoenixes are already down for Team Xist, and Xbox Rejectss pushing up on the only remaining Phoenix on that left-hand side. Don't think they have quite as many 3K pots as they once had, though it looks like Wicked still has his floating around himself, that elixir of defense. Strategic blinks in, finds 2 with the root. Wicked able to use his Moonlit Waltz. Outbound with the agility means that no real follow-up off of that blink, as DeciNerd will meet up with Rygaklu in the mid lane, and this is going to be a trade that heavily favors the Hun Batz, I'd imagine, but instead, actually, DeciNerd is allowed to jump in and not really get punished for it.
Going to get back off, receive some of the Chang'e healing, go back for round 2 on the left side, jumping into Beaudilla, forcing out a lot of ultimate searing pain onto Joltak, but xCovi zoning out the team fight.
Very nicely with that lightning strike. Cbeaarr going to come crashing down and immediately is nearly brought down very low. He can't quite escape as xCovi's detonate does the dirty work. 3 kills already onto Team Xist. Xbox Rejectss will take game 1 of this tiebreaker, but they had to earn it. 46 minutes.
A lot of sustained damage out of XR to confirm their first victory of the day.
26-20 in the end, a very close one as the Xbox Rejectss have a bit of a laugh towards the end there, as to be expected. xCovi 1 to do a lot of laughing. And
Sure.
sometimes has punished him at the pro level, but we'll see if that happens here at the PS4 League as his team finds the first victory. But Team Xist, I think, impressed me. I mean, you expect with the name power that the other team has, the Rejectss were going to come in and play very, very well. But Xist really did impress.
Beaudilla rotating with the Nike from the solo lane, making it harder for xCovi to transition to that mid game, abusing when he didn't have the boots fully completed. I like some of these rotations from DeciNerd as well, making an impact on xCovi. And that was the name of the game, trying to shut down the Zeus. But once he got to the late game, once he got that tanky presence onto him, the same idea of diving that backline was not as fruitful.
The damage, or lack thereof, I should say, for Team Xist certainly reared its ugly head there towards the end of the game as the Xbox Rejectss take game one. Let's take a look at the schedule so you can see what else we've got today. As I mentioned, this is what we're guaranteed to see so far, but we may end up having more tiebreakers if everything goes as it did the first time around these teams played against one another. The Rejectss try and take a 2-0 lead up against the 5 Deadly Syndromes in the next game, and if the Rejectss find that one, they are in. They're sitting at 2-0 and they're in, so we'll have to wait and see if that's exactly what happens for xCovi and the squad. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back with game number 2.